Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a real puzzle from modern Spanish history. How did Spain get almost 40 years of, well, surface-level political stability?
Right.
We're talking roughly 1875 to 1917.
Right.
Especially when, our sources paint a picture of constant turmoil bubbling underneath rigged elections, state violence, even losing an empire. It seems contradictory.
It really is a fascinating paradox. You've got this system that somehow holds together for decades, despite society being deeply fragmented.
Yeah.
Historians often call this the quarantina parlamentaria, the parliamentary quarantine, if you like.
Yeah.
A critical period of stabilization, but incredibly fragile.
Okay.
It basically starts with a military pronunciamento declaration, really in 1874, and it all comes crashing down with the big revolutionary general strike in 1917.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then. We need to unpack the architecture of this fragile piece.
Yeah.
What held it up?
Exactly.
And what were those forces, right under the surface that eventually tore it apart? Let's start with the blueprint. The guy behind it all was the conservative politician Antonio Cánovas del Castillo.
Cánovas, yes. A masterful political architect, you could say. His number one goal: end the chaos, restore the monarchy.
Right.
He navigated things incredibly skillfully to bring Alfonso XII, that's the son of the exiled Queen Isabella II, back to the throne in 1875.
And he laid the groundwork with something called the Manifeste de Sandhurst.
That's right. It was clever, it promised amnesty, a clean slate, and crucially, a new constitution, trying to signal stability.
Hey, stability. But Spain had these deep traditional divisions. What was the first big challenge Cánovas had to tackle to make stability even possible?
The Carlists, definitely the Carlists first. They were this traditionalist, ultra-Catholic group, always fighting for their claim to the throne, a constant source of instability.
Right, the Carlist Wars.
Exactly. Cánovas moved fast to end the Third Carlist War. They captured the Carlist capital, Estella, in 1876. And when their claimant, Don Carlos VII, fled the country, well, that threat was more or less neutralized for a good long while.
Okay.
Which freed Cánovas up to focus on designing the political system itself in Madrid.
Right, so he needed a machine, something permanent to keep things running smoothly, or at least appearing to run smoothly. This brings us to the famous Turno Pacifico, the peaceful rotation. Sounds a bit like the British system, two parties taking turns.
It sounds like it, but not really. Not in practice. The 1876 Constitution, which Cánovas designed, actually gave huge power to the king.
Oh, interesting.
It looked liberal on the outside, but it was pretty authoritarian underneath. The Turno Pacifico wasn't about real choice. It was a prearranged, peaceful rotation of power.
Between who?
Between Cánovas' own conservatives and the main opposition, the liberals, led by Sagasta.
So the liberals weren't really trying to win power, they were just waiting their turn.
Essentially, yes. The whole point was to stop either elite group from feeling excluded and resorting to, well, violence, or another military coup, give everyone a slice of the pie.
Wow. That's quite cynical. How did they actually make this work across the country? How did they control the votes?
That's where caciquismo comes in. Local political manipulation.
Caciquismo.
Elections were, shall we say, heavily managed. You had these local bosses, the cacique, usually powerful landowners or local figures.
Okay.
They controlled the votes, especially in rural areas. They'd provide favors, protection, maybe turn a blind eye to certain things.
And in return?
Guaranteed election results. The election wasn't deciding who governed, it was just rubber stamping the swap the king and the party leaders had already agreed on.
Incredible. So the political elite bought themselves peace through this system. But the monarchy itself, Alfonso XII, still needed some popular appeal, right?
Absolutely. Legitimacy mattered. His reign was cut short only about 10 years, but there's that story about the cholera epidemic in 1885.
Yes. Tell us about that.
Well, cholera hit Valencia hard. Cánovas told the king, stay away, it's too dangerous. Quarantine orders.
Sensible advice, maybe.
Perhaps. But Alfonso XII ignored him. He went straight into the heart of the epidemic area, visited patients, offered comfort, distributed aid.
Wow.
It was a genuinely brave humanitarian gesture. And, it massively boosted his popularity, made him seem like a caring king. Ironically, just before he died of tuberculosis later that same year.
So he projected this image of care, even while the political system was fundamentally rigged.
Precisely. Image versus reality.
But then the system faced a huge test. Alfonso XII dies suddenly in 1885. His wife, Marie Christine, is pregnant, but the heir, Alfonso XIII, isn't born yet. The throne is vacant. technically.
A moment of maximum vulnerability. The whole thing could have collapsed. Carlists, Republicans, anyone could have made a move.
So what happened?
This is where Cánovas and Sagasta showed their, let's say, pragmatic genius. They immediately met and signed the Pardo Pact.
The Pardo Pact.
Yes. It wasn't just patriotism. It was pure political self-preservation for the elites. They formally committed to keeping the Turno going, upholding the Constitution, protecting the monarchy during the long regency of Marie Christine.
Like an insurance policy.
Exactly, an insurance policy for the system to prevent any challenges while the future king was still a child. It worked. It held the line for nearly 17 years.
17 years. Okay, so the crown is secured. The political rotation is formalized. But this stability in Madrid, it came at a cost elsewhere, didn't it? What about social issues? What about the groups left out of this cozy arrangement?
Well, basically all of them. This stability was purely for the political class. Social problems, they were just suppressed, ignored, or crushed.
And this is the late 19th century, so new movements are emerging everywhere.
Absolutely. You see the rise of powerful labor and political forces. Anarchism, for instance, with groups like the FTRE and later the big one, the CNT.
Right.
And socialism, too. Pablo Iglesias Posse founded the PSOE, the Socialist Party, and the UGT Union. These movements grew rapidly despite constant government repression.
And the anarchists in particular embraced some pretty radical tactics. Inspired by Russia?
They did. Nihilist violence became a feature. Really shocking events. The sources mention a bomb attack in Barcelona in 1896.
Targeting a religious procession.
Yeah, the Corpus Christi procession. Apparently you could see the blast marks on the buildings for years. It was raw terror.
And this violence eventually reached the very top of the system.
Tragically, yes. The system started to consume its own creators. Cánovas himself, the architect of it all, was assassinated in 1897.
By an anarchist.
By an Italian anarchist, Michele Angiolillo. So the core mechanism of government was literally under attack.
And if things weren't bad enough internally, the empire was falling apart at the same time.
The two are connected. The focus on political control in Madrid meant ignoring the deep problems in the colonies, especially Cuba.
The peace agreement there, the Pact of Zanjan from 1878, that didn't work out.
Utterly failed to address the real issues, which led directly to the Second War of Independence, launched by the Cuban writer and revolutionary José Martí in 1895.
And Spain's response.
Brutal. Sheer brutality. This is where General Valeriano Weyler comes in.
Weyler, infamous for concentration camps.
Essentially, yes. He pioneered the tactic using barbed wire, which was new then, to herd rural populations into fortified areas near Spanish troops.
To stop them helping the rebels.
Right. But the conditions were horrific. Mass starvation, disease. It was incredibly cruel, and it absolutely horrified public opinion, especially in the United States.
And things weren't much better in the Philippines.
Similar story, heavy-handed repression. Cánovas himself ordered the execution of José Rizal in 1896.
Rizal, the writer and surgeon?
Yes, a brilliant intellectual. His execution turned him into a martyr overnight and just fueled the rebellion led by Emilio Aguinaldo and the Katipunan, the KKK, a Filipino anti-colonial group.
So the empire's on fire, basically.
Yeah.
And then comes the spark that ignites the whole thing.
The USS Maine, February 15th, 1898. The American battleship blows up in Havana Harbor.
And the U.S. blamed Spain.
Immediately. Later evidence pointed strongly to an internal accident, an explosion in the coal bunkers. But at the time, yellow journalism, war fever. It didn't matter. It triggered the Spanish-American War.
Which was a disaster for Spain.
An absolute catastrophe. The disaster of 1898. Spain was swiftly defeated, lost Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, had to sell the Philippines to the U.S. for $20 million.
Wow.
They even sold off their remaining Pacific islands, the Carolines, Marianas, Palaus, to Germany the next year, just trying to cut their losses.
It wasn't just losing territory, was it? It was like Spain lost its whole identity as a world power almost overnight. A deep national trauma.
Profoundly traumatic. And that shock, that humiliation directly fueled what's called the mouvement regenerationiste, the regenerationist movement of the generation of 98.
Thinkers like Unamuno or Ortega y Gasset.
Exactly. Intellectuals grappling with this national failure, trying to figure out how to restore Spain's spirit, its standing, after the system had so clearly failed.
Okay, so the restoration system somehow survived the Regency. It survived 1898. But when the young King Alfonso XIII actually took the throne in 1902, did things change? Did he try to fix the system?
No, not really. Alfonso III quickly showed he had rather authoritarian, militaristic leanings himself. The Turno system just kind of limped on.
And the focus shifted away from the lost empire.
To Morocco. Spain tried to renew its colonial efforts there in the Rio de Oro and especially the Rif region. Partly commercial interest, partly strategic. It faces the Canary Islands.
He's got international blessing for this at the Algeciras Conference in 1906.
Yeah, they secured their sort of consolation prizes, zones of influence in northern and southern Morocco. But it meant more war. The Rif Wars really ramped up under the conservative Prime Minister Antoni Maura around 1907.
And this new military adventure quickly caused trouble back home, didn't it? The Semana Tragica in Barcelona, 1909.
The tragic week, a direct consequence. Maura called up reservists to send to the Rif. Many were working-class men, fathers. Some had already fought in Cuba. They did not want to go.
Protests erupted.
Massive protests in Barcelona, which quickly turned violent. Anarchists got involved, general strikes were called, churches were burned, there was street fighting, it was chaos.
And the government response.
Harsh repression. It ended with the execution of Francesc Ferrer, a well-known anarchist-linked educational reformer. His execution caused a huge international outcry. Another black eye for Spain.
The cycle of violence just kept going. It seemed like even politicians trying moderate reforms couldn't escape it.
It's heartbreaking, really. The liberal prime minister, José Canalejas, he was actually trying to make things fairer, modernize the military service laws, deal with a Republican uprising in 1911, assassinated, shot dead by an anarchist in Madrid's Puerta del Sol in 1912. The political leaders were literally being gunned down.
Unbelievable level of instability. Yet, somehow, through all this, Spain stays neutral in World War I.
Officially, yes. The conservative prime minister, Eduardo Dato, managed to keep Spain out of the war from 1914 to 1918. It was a difficult balancing act.
Because the country was divided internally.
Deeply divided. You had the Elidophiles people sympathetic to Britain and France, like the liberal leader Romanones and many intellectuals. And then the Germanophiles, those who admired Germany, including many army generals who liked the Prussian military model.
But King Alfonso XIII himself played a different role during the war.
He did, actually, a rather admirable one. He set up a personal humanitarian initiative, the Oficina Pro Cautivos.
The Office for Prisoners of War.
Exactly. He used his royal connections across Europe to negotiate for prisoners, locate missing people, help civilians caught up in the war, help tens of thousands. It was a rare positive note for the monarchy then.
But while Spain wasn't fighting, the war economy was creating huge problems at home.
Oh, absolutely. Spain was selling goods, industrial, agricultural, to both sides, making money on a national level. But wages for ordinary people didn't keep up. Prices went up, but pay stayed stagnant. Social inequality just got worse and worse. It created this social powder keg.
Ready to explode.
Ready to explode. And it finally did in 1917.
The breaking point.
The 1917 Revolutionary General Strike, called by the socialist unions, the PSOE and UGT, often joined by the anarchists, too. It was a massive wave of labor unrest, protesting the economic hardship and the government's inability or unwillingness to help.
And this marked the end of the restoration system as it was.
Pretty much the end of the Turno-Pacifico system. That peaceful rotation just collapsed. It turned into what they called the tourbillon politico, the political whirlwind. Governments came and went rapidly. Nobody could stabilize the situation. The fragile quarantine was over.
So we come back to where we started, this incredible paradox. The Cánovas system bought nearly 40 years of political stability, using this controlled rotation and, let's be honest, rigged elections and repression.
It did achieve longevity, yes, but the methods used.
Right. By suppressing all those other forces, labor movements, anarchism, regional demands, the fallout from colonial failure, it was basically incubating the very forces that would tear it down.
That's a good way to put it. Cánovas brilliantly solved the old problems of 19th century Spain, like Carlism and the early weak republicanism.
Right.
But the system he built was completely unequipped, totally unable to handle the pressures of the 20th century. Industrial society, mass politics, the trauma of losing an empire.
And it's striking that both Cánovas, the conservative architect, and Canalejas, the reforming liberal, were killed by anarchists. The violence generated by the system consumed its leaders, regardless of their political leaning.
It really underscores how the stability was just a veneer.
Which leaves us, and you the listener, with a pretty stark question, I think. When a political system achieves stability mainly by keeping deep social and ideological conflicts suppressed, locked away, did it really buy 4 decades of peace?
Or did it just stare up 40 years of unresolved, unspent violence waiting to erupt? Something to think about when we look at how different political systems try to manage conflict today.